impossible dream. To build a Celtic side made up of the greatest players from the past. It's a fantasy that every supporter has indulged in, deciding who gets the nod to play in the all-time Celtic dream team and who just didn't quite make it. The enormity of the task becomes even more apparent when you consider some of the hugely talented players who have turned out for the hoops. More than 700 players have pulled on the green and white jersey since the club's inception, each in different measure a part of the Celtic tradition. From those who only played a handful of games for the club, to the men whose names are indelibly written in the pages of the club's history. How do you compare the talents of one player with another from an earlier era, when the game has changed so much over the years? How can you evaluate the skills of a good player in an ordinary side compared with a competent player in a successful one? Despite these difficulties, we've stuck our neck out and come up with a selection which we are confident would be more than a match for any team. Of course, it should be said at this stage that, for obvious reasons, players of the modern era benefit, not only from the fact that their exploits remain fresh in our memory, but also from the technology of television and video, which allows the luxury of reliving their finest moments. For this reason, we must declare an inevitable bias for players who plied their trade in the latter half of the century. That is not to undermine the part played in Celtic's rich and colourful history by legendary figures such as Dan Doyle, Jimmy Kelly, Alec McNair, Jimmy Quinn, Patsy Gallagher or Jimmy McGrory. Their contribution is well documented and their talents undisputed.
Patsy Gallagher, to me, was one of the greatest footballers I ever saw. In my first cup final, 1925, Patsy Gallagher got a pass from Peter Wilson and right on our own 18 yards line, and I'll guarantee that he beat about 5 men on the road and staggered. Every time he was tackled, he was down on the ground, he got up as quickly, and then inside the 6 yards line, he made a somersault and took the ball with him between his feet and into the net.
The first questions are, what are the qualities possessed by a good Celtic side? And secondly, what are the characteristics of a great Celt?
With Celtic, you've got to try and introduce flair, because it's always been, as long as I can remember seeing Celtic, they've always had this aspect about flair and personality and ability to play and to pass the ball. That's something that is essential to Celtic. Excitement is something that goes hand in hand with Celtic.
The most vital ingredient nowadays is pace, both in defensive area and also the most important area of the lot, where the final third, you've got to get away from defenders and score a goal. With this club, they've also got to have a real stamina and a real passion to go along with it.
Once I put the Celtic strip on, I was a changed person. You know, that was enough for us. That was enough for a lot of players. Everybody done their bit, and I mean everybody done their bit when somebody was out injured and things, you know. So we were all winners. That was the important thing. We were all winners.
And individuals always, you know, individual flair players always stuck out in my mind, sort of more than, you know, others. And probably most Celtic fans will say I could probably pick 3 or 4 dream teams. But I think I've been hard pushed to change the guys that I've picked today. I've deliberated long and hard.
Out of the team I've picked, there's probably about 4 or 5 captains, guys that's captained the club, you know. I think out of them all, they're all desperate winners, but they all wanted to do the best for their team as well, you know. Allied to their flair and ability, they all worked hard for each other, you know, but they had that wee bad class as well. And if you want to succeed, you've got to have that, and that team would definitely have that.
In the first place, it's an impossible job, and every Celtic supporter will give you a different team. I'm quite certain of that. But first of all, the best Celtic team that ever was the Lisbon Lions, 1967 team. There's a temptation to pick all of them en masse because, quite simply, they were the best balanced and the most attractive and the most successful Celtic team of all time. But, of course, there were other individuals who cannot be ignored.
If anybody was picking their dream team, I think the easy thing to do is to take the Lisbon Lions and possibly draft in Danny McGrain and Kenny Dalglish, and then, you know, who do you drop sort of thing. It's very difficult. But in selecting my Celtic dream team, I've gone for players who were my favourite players rather than necessarily the players who were the greater or the better players at that time. So there's a wee bit of sentimentality comes into it, and I'm quite prepared to admit that.
No, I thought long and hard about it, and I felt maybe one or two different individuals here, but from a blending point of view of the team, I think I've hit it right. In the vetting, that would have been more attacking minded. I think it was enough there to prevent them losing any silly goals.
I think it was almost an impossible task, to tell you the truth. There's so many players have passed through Celtic Park who have been so good. To try and fit them all into one team was really difficult. What I tried to do was look at all the players that I personally thought were good and put them into a team, and I also tried to make one player complement the next player to get this sort of dream team into shape.
I'm a year or two younger than these guys, but got less grey hair, as you can see. I went for Ronnie Simpson in goal.
You definitely need a strong backbone of the team, you know, like for your goalkeeper, your centre half, centre of midfield, you know, if you've got them strong, then the rest of the team will kind of take care of itself, you know.
It always seemed to be that Celtic were more cavalier. The Rangers would build from the back, and we, as long as we had a good forward line, it would kind of take care of itself. We'd maybe win 4-3, 10-9 rather than going for 1-0.
I would certainly have McStay in my team, definitely.
I'd have he or George Conley. I think a lot of teams come out these days and they look at teams and they say, who's the hard man in the team? And they maybe fear him. Perhaps we don't have that just now. Davy Hay was certainly a hard man, but he was a fair tackler as well.
But generally, Bertie Auld is in the same mould as Davy Hay. He was the hard man in that Celtic, in Jock Stein's Celtic team.
Psychologically, it's good if your opposition team runs out at Celtic Park knowing that there's players there who are tough and strong, because physique does go a long way to making a good team as well as skill.
The more skillful players in the team need to be able to rely on someone that's behind them and going to look after them.
Yeah. Exactly.
And someone was talking about how Gemmell and Auld both looked after Jimmy Johnson, who wasn't really capable of looking after himself in that fashion, but they were certainly his minders.
I mean, we've got the silky players now, Di Canio, Tom, players along their lines, but there's nobody with any physical stature that the other teams are, you know, what you would say afraid of. You know, they're just too weak in the middle of the park, and I think maybe that's what we need, a Bertie Auld or a Bobby Murdoch, somebody that'll impose themselves on the game.
Paul also made a good point of you know, pulling Kenny back a wee bit. He thought that Kenny's best position was midfield, breaking forward. So, you know, that's another candidate for the midfield as well.
I don't know Conley, but I'd certainly agree with Murdoch. Although, as I say, I don't remember all that much about watching him. I was sitting on the park. But certainly, speaking to other people, he seems to be.
There are some players who are almost automatic choices, such as the extent of their contribution as a player and their influence on their team. The first choice in the dream team is in defence and is also our captain.
Every team needs a leader, and I don't think there's been anyone better than Caesar.
He was the first British guy non-Latin to lift a European Cup, but I think he had a good influence on the rest of his team.
For me, Billy McNeill is the greatest living Celt.
McNeill scores! He just summed up everything that a Celtic player is.
A legendary figure there, magnificent in the air.
Big Billy, I think, proved time and time again, you know, at Celtic, he was a leader. And if you talk about Celtic Football Club, people always remember Billy McNeill.
And I think he led by example. He was a really good professional. Still to this day, you know, he's held in high esteem.
What thoughts ever crossed your mind, if any, about playing for another club apart from Celtic?
Well, obviously from different times everyone thinks about playing for somebody else, particularly I think Scottish footballers think about playing England. And It wouldn't be true if I said I had never thought of going to England, but what I can say, I've never thought seriously for any length of time of going to England.
I always remember Billy walking with the puffed out chest. You know, a very intimidating sight for any player. A very stern, serious look in his face when he took to the field.
And there he is. That's the gesture of a captain.
But he's got an aura about him. He had that as a player as well, you know. And people say he wasn't the most gifted player in the world, you know, but it's so many other attributes.
People can argue about his abilities as a player, but he was the leader.
Couldn't even think of him that came close to Billy McNeill. Strong in the air, commanding, encouraging.
I always remember one of the older players telling me that it was great when you went away to Europe to play and you knew that these balls were getting bombed into the box, that you just knew that the big man would be there heading them back out. You didn't need to worry about it.
McNeill clearing. Could be a difficult one. Here's Hood. A great goal by Hood.
Billy would probably tell you himself he wasn't the greatest guy on the deck, but he was magnificent in the air. He scored a lot of vital goals. The thing that started the ball rolling after Jock Stein joined us was the Scottish Cup final against Dunfermline in 1965. And Billy came up and in the last 5 or 6 minutes scored with a glorious header to put us in front 3-2 and obviously won the cup. And another instance was in the last minute of the game against Vojvodina, which was a quarter-final of European Cup, the year we won it in '67. Billy came up for the last-minute corner kick from Charlie Gallagher and headed in the winner.
Billy McNeill coming up for a second shot. He scored! Flying goal from Billy McNeill.
At the back, it's always been Billy and John Clark tighten up here at the back.
He had the confidence of Jock Stein in as much that Big Jock would confide a lot in Billy to try and cajole the rest of the team to get us playing.
McNeill, that's a goal by McNeill. McNeill has scored after 22 minutes, as he's done so often for Celtic. I don't know what he said to the Racing Club defender. As usual, Billy McNeill will be up for this. There's McNeill, it's a goal. A goal by McNeill as the Rangers defence absolutely slept. Brilliantly taken by McNeill.
The kick to be taken by Callaghan. McNeill going in. McNeill has scored.
There's nothing to compensate for playing. I had the idea at the time to go out at the top. I was 35 years of age, but in retrospect, I'm not sure if I did the right thing, because I remember coming back here as manager when I was 38 years of age, and I was probably fitter than the players I inherited. But as I say, it was marvellous. I had a great career, and the last 10 years were absolutely magnificent.
The next position to be filled is bound to cause heated debate, with two main candidates for the post. Over the years, there have been many Celtic goalkeepers worthy of inclusion in the Dream Team.
I feel it's a shame for some goalkeepers because they can make mistakes and they're always noticed. Whereas outfield players, you know, if they make a mistake, they can quickly rectify it in the next minute or two. Say a forward misses a chance, he can score 2 minutes later and he's a hero. I actually think Ali Hunter, who came from Kilmarnock for Celtic, was a quite good goalkeeper. After him, Celtic went through quite a few people. They've had Roy Baines.
Baines on his league debut for Celtic, facing a penalty kick. Last Saturday, Hamish McAlpine saved one. And this time, Baines does it. Baines, the hero of the moment for Celtic.
Peter Latchford was not a bad goalkeeper.
And Hibs making a positive challenge right at the start of the second half. Deflected, and Latchford the hero.
We've had Ian Andrews, Alan Ruff.
I would like to mention two other guys. One is Bent Martin, purely by virtue of the fact that it must be the funniest name ever in Scottish football. One of my favourite goals was Evan Williams, especially when he used to put the bits of mud under his eyes to stop the glare of the floodlights. But my father used to say that he must have put the mud in his eyes because he missed so much. I always remember the game when they lost to Feyenoord in the 1970 European Cup final. I think people forget Evan Williams had a great game that night and he had a few really important saves.
Tries a shot, great save.
To me, honestly, in my time of watching them, there is only two goalkeepers to choose, and that would have been between Ronnie Simpson and Pat Bonner.
Pat Bonner, I felt, was somebody that worked exceptionally hard to make himself into a top-class goalkeeper with Celtic. And then even further on, because he was prepared to push himself every ounce, every day, he got himself a real first-class international career as well. Played in European Championships, starred in European Championships and starred in World Cups. And that was through his own determination.
He was very thorough in his preparation for things. He was tall and commanding, and he could make the good stops as well.
He's missed it. Warner has saved.
He was very underrated, but I think he went to the World Cup, I think it was 90 in Italy, and proved how good a goalkeeper he was. And probably at that time he was one of the best in the world, and that's why I've selected him as the #1.
I would have Mr. Reliable himself in goal, old Ronnie Simpson. He was very, very confident and he was very consistent.
The irony of Ronnie Simpson is that he was sold by Jock Stein from Hibs to Celtic at a time when people thought he was well past his best.
It was a good bit of business that Jock done, maybe knowing that he was going to be coming to Celtic in the near future, selling one of his best assets at Hibs at the time to Celtic.
Ronnie came to Celtic very late on. He actually got his first cap at 36, which was in 1967. His nickname was Old Feather because he sort of looked older and probably was older than the rest of the team.
He'd been and done it all, by the time he came back to Celtic. He'd played with Newcastle in the early 50s, FA Cup final winner. He'd been about, he was a bit of a journeyman, and I think that team at that time needed, an old head.
Great goal and a shot and save.
It was great for crosses. Came out very confidently, got down very quickly, and also organised the defence.
He wasn't the tallest of goalkeepers, but he didn't need to really come out for a lot of cross balls because we had Billy McNeill in the middle anyway.
And he and I had a great relationship that we knew exactly what was in each other's minds. I knew exactly what I could leave to him, and basically he left an awful lot of responsibilities to me as well, and it worked well for us.
Quite simply, he was reliability itself. And then, astonishingly, in the European Cup final against Inter Milan, had the nerve to backheel the ball while making a clearance from an Italian forward.
Any goalkeeper that's got the ball to backheel the ball in the European Cup final has got the right to be in the dream team.
I would have to go for Ronnie Simpson because not only is he my hero, but also he wrote a book called For It's a Grand Old Team to Play For, which never won the Nobel Literature Prize, but it should have. So he would be my goalkeeper, it would be Ronnie Simpson.
When talking of Celtic goalkeepers, one of the most poignant memories is that of John Thompson and his tragic death in an Old Firm match on September 5th, 1931.
A young lad named John Thompson, from the Wellesley Fife he came to play for Glasgow Celtic and to build himself a name. On the 5th day of September, against the Rangers Club he played. From defeat he saved the Celtic, but what a price he paid. The boy.
If you're a Celtic supporter, you know the words of the John Thompson song, and it's one of the great sad songs, and you grow up with it and you hear it again, and suddenly one day I thought, I wish I knew more about that, and could I find out more about this guy. Being an Irish club and being in Scotland, the Irish in Scotland, we're Celts, and we love a tragedy. I think there's something in us. We love a tragedy like that, like Benny Lynch is a great tragedy, and Bonnie Prince Charlie and things like that. They'd never seen anything like him before. He was a goalkeeper that actually brought an art to it. The sad thing is that there's not a lot of footage, obviously, so we've got to rely on what people are writing in the paper. Now, you can say that they exaggerate these things, but remember, when they were writing them at the time, they didn't know that he was going to die young or the tragedy that was going to befall him. So we have to take their word for it. It all points to somebody who, you know, when goalkeepers were big fat guys that blocked the goals, he was a guy he was 5'10", which isn't that tall. He was only 11.5 stone, and he was very lithe and almost, you know, balletic in the way he went about his business. And I think it's a combination of things. It's the tragedy and it's the fact that he was good. And I think that combines to make him, you know, he is a legend. He is a Celtic legend, you know. He's a Scottish legend, I suppose, as well. What we have to remember is that there's two tragedies here. I mean, there's a tragedy that John Thompson died, but it was a tragedy for Sam English that he was the guy that, you know, it was a 50-50 ball. He went for a 50-50 ball. If you ever study the footage, you'll notice that Thompson hesitates for just a second. You know, why did he hesitate? You know, he knew that this was a dangerous one. He'd been injured many times in the past. He's quite a reckless guy when it came to going for the ball. They both went for the ball, and Thompson obviously, you know, came off worst. It was Sam English's knee that came into contact with John's head. Like any football disaster, it brings communities together, and the Celtic and Rangers fans did come together in a sense of shared grief. But the sad thing is that it didn't really last very long. Sam English got a rough deal, a raw deal out of the whole thing. He was never allowed to forget it, and never did forget it. And I think that's, you know, that was as I say, it was two tragedies. It was a tragedy what happened to John Thompson, but you know, it was a tragedy that English was left to live with that. You know, and he was only 21. You know, and Thompson was only 22. So they were boys really. You know, and that it's just you know, really sad time for everybody, for both sides of the Old Firm divide. I've written this play called The 50-50 Ball, and it's the story of John Thompson and Sam English, and I'm hopeful that it will go into production next May 97. It's an attempt just to actually maybe show the kind of the futility of the bigotry stuff, because I mean, you know, Thompson wasn't even a Catholic, you know, and it kind of blew the whole thing wide open, and it's an attempt just to tell the story. Tell the real story, and, you know, the kind of the sort of slushy myth that goes with it.
No more we'll stand and cheer you on the slopes of Celtic Park.
Our next choice for the Dream Team came to prominence in the early 70s as part of the Quality Street gang, and again is virtually undisputed at right back.
The best right back that I can ever remember playing for Celtic was Danny McGrain, undoubtedly.
For a spell, I would think he was one of the top players in the world here. He was a magnificent footballer.
The term world class is used too easily nowadays. I don't think anybody could say that Danny McGrain wasn't world class.
I saw Danny play at Ibrox against the schoolboys. I think the schoolboys beat the Scottish schoolboys 4-1. I was impressed with Danny, so much so actually I always carried a form in my pocket. I went straight from Ibrox to Drumchapel. I knew where he lived. I was offered to, wait it until Danny came in, signed them, and I farmed them out to Maryhill Juniors. And Danny was very near let go to Bristol City. Very few people know that.
Well, good tackle by Danny McGrain. Now they must make some ground with this. That's to Douglas. It's a beautiful ball. Oh, it's there.
He came in later than the Douglases and the Maccaries and things. You had to wait and be that bit more patient about his first team debut. But when it came, I mean, they exploded on the scene.
A good play, Wilson. That's it.
From the right back position, he used to dominate games. He was probably our most potent weapon for many years. Just an incredible player, incredible player.
Even the free kicks are taken quickly. McGrain. Still there, prepared to go, and he's on! Dalglish, it must be!
Pleasure to watch Danny McGrain. He made other players around about him, you know, shine. I'm sure that Kenny would tell you that, you know, he was a great influence with Kenny, and him and Danny as a double act was just a thrill to watch.
Again, moving forward, unchallenged to Dalglish. Dalglish for the cut back.
He was a great person to play with, but he was also a good lad. And I mean, when I was at Celtic, if we went anywhere, that was my room partner. So the two have been through a wee bit together. And but on the football pitch, he certainly was a marvellous player.
Ken and I both signed the same season they won the European Cup. We all came through in that sort of same mould. We had the ability.
McGrain and Lynch always coming through so easily. Brilliant bit of play by McGrain. Doyle and the header. Oh, it comes to Green and he's must score.
I think from the earliest days when he suffered his fractured skull at Falkirk, when he'd just broken into the Celtic team, he showed that kind of durability of spirit.
He had a fractured skull. He turned out that he had diabetes, and he also suffered from arthritis. I think for any one of these illnesses to come over a footballer would sort of more or less finish them. But Danny was out probably about 18 months, 2 years, came back, wasn't the player he was beforehand, but a wonderful, absolutely wonderful player.
There's Russell and slid away by Danny McGrain.
I think what I'd like to single out was Danny McGrain's shooting ability.
You know, I mean, Danny couldn't score to save his life, right enough, but I mean, his mazy runs and his dribbles and his overlaps and his timing were absolutely phenomenal.
If it hadn't been him that had fired that shot in the 1980 Cup final, George McCluskey would never have got in the end of it and we'd never have won the Cup.
Well away by Dawson. There's Sneddon. Tom Forsyth, still not clear. Danny McGrain. Oh, that's a goal! McCluskey got the touch from that shot. There was a deflection.
That one is the only one I really clearly remember. I was involved in the 1-2 with George McCluskey, and the most memorable thing about that game was the riot after it. I mean, the game itself peers into insignificance. The goal was one of these freak things that on time I scored goals was always a freak involvement.
He was very seldom booked or sent off. He was a good leader, but I think he encouraged a lot of the young boys.
And I can remember he took me after training one day. He said, "This is how you build up your thighs up above." He said, "Because I've never had a knee problem." He said, "I've played for so many years." He said, "I've had other injuries and whatever." He said, "I've never had knee problems." He used to sit against the wall as if he was sitting like a chair, you know, just to build his thighs up. And he had the biggest thighs I've seen in a football player. And it gave him great strength, you know, in the tackle, you know, striking the ball, but a very, very good head on him, you know, football brain.
Danny had that wee bit more, how shall I say, craft and skill, which I think is often important. And he was as hard as nails as well, but Danny was a marvellous player.
And what made him world class for me was that he stuck with the club when he could have probably went to any team in the world.
For me, I always believed and I always looked for the attacking and the stylish player. And Danny McGrain was a full-back and had that same quality. And that was very, very unusual for Celtic to have somebody like that at the back. So it was inspirational.
But old Danny was a great, great player for Celtic. If they get anybody that's within a couple of miles of him playing for Celtic at right back, then they've got a good player.
With two members of the Lisbon Lions already in place, our third claims his place in defence, and there can be little doubt about the quality of this player at left back.
Well, for me, Tommy Gemmell was supreme.
Again, you know, it's been a position like the goalkeeping position with Celtic. Haven't been too strong, you know, over the last 30 years, and I think Tommy stands at a mile.
Big Tom was very flamboyant, like to get forward, and also he always a goal threat. You know, for that alone. But Gemmell was a good player as well. But a Celtic type, very good going forward. Possibly not the best defensively, But with Celtic, it's very little that you're on the defence, you're always on the offence, so Big Tam just fitted perfectly into the picture there.
Sam Gamble in most cases to come through here and do something, or the same on the other side of the field.
Well, that's all right if Yogi hesitates to take the fullback.
When you look at all the attacking fullbacks now, basically they're all copying Tommy Gemmell. He was the first and he was the best. Look at the number of goals he scored, look at the number of shots on target he had in the 1967 European Cup final.
Tommy Gemmell, quite simply, brings to mind words like cavalier. Everything that he did had that touch of flair about it.
Gemmell. Wallace! It's a goal! Wallace!
He turned things round. Rather than Tommy looking after wingers, I mean, it ended up the wingers looking after him and they ended up chasing him away back. And, you know, tremendous skill for a big fella.
How many players have scored in the 2 European Cup finals, especially at fullback, you know, but he had a wonderful strike rate.
He was so fit that it was quite incredible because he was up and down that pitch all day long.
I particularly remember the Benfica game when we won 3-0. Tommy Gemmell's goal for about, it felt like 60 yards that night. I think it was about 40. I think it's still going yet.
Alden Murdoch taking their time with this one. Gemmell! It's a goal! What a beautiful goal for Celtic!
And even the European competition used to stand out head and shoulders above everybody else, even against some of the best players in the world.
Murdoch and Gemmell. Goal!
But everything about his play was refreshing and enjoyable. And Tommy, the whole thing had to be a laugh for Tommy because that was the way he played it.
And the fact that everybody still likes Tommy Gemmell, I think, you know, and everybody recognised he was a larger-than-life character. He could play and he could have a joke as well, so he'd be there as well, definitely.
With our defence coming together, we now require one more player to complete our back four. There are a few candidates for the central defensive role. Among the names mentioned are Roy Aitken and the enigmatic George Connolly.
Well, I've got Roy Aitken in there, and I mean, you know, it's a challenge, as Roy Aitken would say.
Doyle to take this. It's a great equaliser. Aitken has equalised.
Somebody comes into a team as early as he did, you know, I mean, it was 16, 17 or something when he played, and it was a very good Celtic team at the time, you know.
Cruikshank just got a touch. Oh, beautiful goal. Roy Aitken.
He was a guy that got an awful lot of criticism, but I mean, you know, he was hard and wily in a kind of continental sense.
There's a cross straight through, driven in by Aitken and a great goal. Aitken scores the magnificent right-foot shot.
There's tremendous influence for the players around about him. I mean, he always growling at everybody, you know, obviously got the nickname the Bear and whatever, you know, but players didn't like playing against him, and that's one up right away.
Probably involved in 2 of Celtic's goals. And that is it! Roy Aitken, the Celtic captain.
He's the fittest guy I've ever met. Anything you wanted to do, Roy was away up the front, always. But I've proven the games, if the team was down and maybe struggling a wee bit, who'd burst for the back with the ball would be Roy.
Hegarty, here's Aitken. Good drifting ball, it's there, Mugabe.
George Connolly was a magnificent player. George was one of the most talented footballers I've ever seen.
An immense talent, way ahead of his time, and I think that we remember him because we were so bitter, you know, for the years gone by that we never had him. I think he would have been the backbone of another very successful team if we could have just built around him, but unfortunately, you know, it wasn't the case.
The first game Celtic played after they won the European Cup, I think it was around about September in 1967, Celtic played Dynamo Kiev. George would probably be about 15, 16, and it was a freezing cold night, and to entertain the fans at half-time, George came out and played keepy-uppy with the ball right around the park,
and it was something I had never seen in my life.
My first memory of George was in the 1969 Cup final. You know, taking the ball off John Gregg and, you know, walking around the goalkeeper into the net. So I think that sticks in everyone's mind.
Gregg. Here's Connolly. What a chance for Connolly. It's a goal. It's a goal by Connolly.
Now, for Connolly to have been in that team was a surprise in the first place, because Celtic had been severely hampered by injury. Neither John Hughes nor Jimmy Johnston was able to play in the final, but he came in and demonstrated that exceptional talent.
He had the ability to go and take people on, and the composure he showed at that particular day in that cup final was tremendous. But that was typical of George. He had supreme confidence in his ability, and rightly so.
And that night afterwards, we enjoyed ourselves afterwards, you know, because our mate had won his first cup final.
But I mean, the skills, especially for someone at that time who was portrayed as a defender, you know, everyone remembers the games against Leeds and the things that he'd done.
Bertie Auld, a long one for Wallace to chase, and Madeley is shadowing, and Madeley almost losing out on it. Reaney there, giving him support, and a shot across the goal, and a goal to Celtic in the very first minute. In the very first minute, a goal for Celtic.
George had tremendous ball control. He could hold on to the ball, he could pass it. He was a good reader of the game. He could put the ball in a 10-pence piece from 60 yards.
He had lots of confidence as a player. He was also quoted as having similar style to Franz Beckenbauer.
Hughes. Connolly. Minutes buzzing in the middle, there's Lennox!
He was off the Beckenbauer type, you know, and he certainly had that same ability to step from the back and step forward and to make some tremendous passes. But he could defend as well, which was important.
Unfortunately for Georgie, he gave up football very early. I think he's quite a complex character, and it's a great pitch. I think could have got a lot more from George Connolly.
George was only a young boy, but he was a quiet boy. And he seemed to always been a wee bit of a shell, and obviously try to bring him out and things. That there was always something that George, you know, I don't think he liked living through in this area. I think he preferred to stay back in Fife.
And he always had difficulty coming to terms with the life of the professional footballer, the way in which a footballer is celebrated in the city of Glasgow if he plays for one of the old firm sides.
It's a man's decision, you know, that he just chucked it and that was it.
Whatever it was, it robbed George of a sparkling career, but I think more importantly, it robbed fans of the right to see him play.
He had a tremendous talent. Unfortunately, a few years later, he was out of the game altogether, simply because he couldn't handle the spotlight, and that was the great tragedy from Celtic's point of view, because he didn't begin to realise the full potential that he had.
He would have been a rock for Celtic for years and years to come.
It's a loss to George especially. I think that's keeping on a bit. A loss to Celtic and a loss to the game, because he's exceptionally talented. He was coming to the age where he'd only get better in the position he was playing in. Yeah, a big loss to football.
Midfield has traditionally been a strong area for Celtic, and we were spoilt for choice when it comes to choosing the players who will fill these positions. The right side of the park will be the first area that we'll look at.
For me, the best midfielder that I can remember the club ever having was Bobby Murdoch.
Could pass the ball well, could tackle well, could score goals. Brilliant midfield player.
Everybody from that era says that when Bobby Murdoch played, Celtic played.
For a man who was so big, you know, he had wonderful balance.
Very aggressive boy, but magnificent touch, great pass of the ball, great strike of the ball, very enthusiastic lad, and a superb player.
He's arguably one of the greatest Scottish players of all time and most underrated players of all time. He was hard, Bobby Murdoch, and he was skillful.
Chance if he can get his shot in. It's in there! Yes, it's a goal!
A wonderful passer of the ball, you know. He always looked as if he was in command of every situation, you know. He knew what he was doing, which is a big plus, especially playing for a club like Celtic, and because Celtic were involved in Europe so long, and I think that's why they were so good in Europe.
Bobby Murdoch, quite simply, had Celtic in his heart, and it remains there to this day.
Took the field against Giles and Bremner, two of the real big names in British football, and outshone them by a mile.
I remember an old Rangers player saying to me that they called him Bobby Murder, and every time they'd been tackled they thought he'd been hit with a brick wall.
The Inter Milan team manager Heleno Herrera said that Bobby Murdoch was a complete footballer.
I always remember Jackie Charlton saying that after he'd bought him for Middlesbrough, it was the greatest signing and the greatest football move he'd ever made in his life.
His metabolism let him down, not his temperament, his metabolism. It was hard for Bobby Murdoch to retain the physical capabilities for playing at the highest level.
Obviously, he always fought against his weight, but I'd hate to think what type of player, what kind of player Bobby Murdoch would have been if he'd have been sort of 10 stone, you know, slim.
We went to the European Cup to play in, and I was bothered with my ankle. I was out for about 4 weeks, then I come back. And after that, it was the close season before it would get better again. And Big Yogi had an ankle injury as well, but Big Yogi told the trainer, you know, there's only that game to play in, so I wouldn't tell him. I just kept out his road, you know, I didn't tell him that my ankle was killing me. It puts doubt in the manager's mind, so I didn't tell him I had a bad ankle. But I had a bad ankle anyway, most of my career. It was worth it. No, but it was worth it then. But that's what happens. I mean, it was only that was my livelihood. I couldn't do anything else, you know. I mean, that's where I get the money to feed my family and dress them and get a mortgage and whatever. So don't regret anything when I was here. Not a thing.
Bobby Murdoch is the popular choice for a place in midfield. Now let's take a look at who will play in the other midfield positions.
I'm picking Bertie Auld to partner Bobby midfield. You know, they were a great combination. Bertie had the guile and the ability to cut down defences, supremely confident.
Bertie Auld, what can you say about Bertie? Every team, I believe, needs a bit of guile and a wee bit of dig. Someone who could read the game, someone who had a real fast brain, maybe sometimes ahead of other people. But when the chips were down, he would always be there. And Bertie had all these qualities. And he could also score goals.
Auld, Lennox, Hughes, and Auld. It's back to Auld. Auld tries one in. And goal. Wallace back to Auld. A lovely chance here. Goal.
You watch the old footage of Bertie Auld and you forget how fast Bertie Auld was. And I mean, again, like a continental midfielder, he could dig when he needed to, he could run, he could pass, he could score when he needed to.
Auld. Smith with them.
Could sort them out if need be, and obviously in big games you need to be some of the times a wee bit nasty to let people know you're there, and certainly the wee man was never found wanting in that department. But also a marvellous footballer, a real crafty guy, and you know, disguised the passes well, lovely way to pass, and was also able to go and score goals on his own as well.
He blended very well with Bobby Murdoch in midfield. The two of them, they just had this telepathy. If Bertie wasn't there, Bobby would be there, and vice versa. Of course, that was all part of the teamwork.
To Auld.
My dad wanted me to be Bertie Auld. That was the type of player my dad wanted me to be. He just wanted me to be that cocky and that. Sadly, it's not really my character to be that way. But to be honest, I mean, they were just maybe at the end of their very best time. And the team coming through just after that, I mean, I was a huge admirer of Danny McGrain and Davy Hay. I thought they were exceptional, and I used to watch Davy Hay, and I can remember thinking, he's played the whole season. I don't remember seeing a mistake. I don't remember seeing a misplaced pass, and people don't talk about it now. And I play the game now, and I try to give the ball away, even with my style of maybe holding on to it, but I try to give the ball away as few times as possible. I mean, it hurts me badly to give it away because I watched Davy Hay, and I knew, just staring at the whole game, I knew the pride he had in making sure he just never just ceded possession at all.
I think something the present day Celtic team lack is a Davy Hay. Davy Hay, nicknamed the Quiet Assassin. I remember standing watching Dave in the Jungle through the years, and if a player from an opposing team fouled a Celtic player, probably a player that didn't have the physique to perhaps dish out the same treatment back, the Jungle used to chant, "He's going to get you, he's going to get you." And, you know, invariably he did, you know.
Throw to Celtic, picked up by Murdoch. Murdoch returning it. Hay keeping it beautifully in play, drawing it to his right foot and getting it across. A back header there. Chance for Celtic. Dalglish scores.
Could almost play in any position in the back four. Played midfield for Celtic as well. Had his contractual disputes with Celtic early 70s and headed off to Chelsea. Great loss to Celtic.
Short one, McCluskey. McStay. Oh yes! Sheer brilliance from young Paul McStay.
We talk about Paul McStay when he was at his best. Definitely could hold his own in any company.
Celtic edging forward very slowly. They have 5 men in the penalty area. McStay, brilliant goal.
McStay, I think, was harshly treated latterly by supporters and pundits alike because it was assumed that everything that went wrong with Celtic was McStay's fault. But by that time he had been carrying Celtic for a decade. When he came in at 17, he was surrounded by more experienced players and could then be allowed to emerge at his own pace.
Paul McStay, away from McKinnon. There's the equaliser.
If I was playing that system, then Murdoch would be on the right-hand side, Bertie would be on the left, and Paul would sit centre, and then basically his role would be just to feed the two of them, and he could go and do his bit as well. It'd be a nice thought to see the three playing together.
Perhaps he lacks only the regular goal-scoring touch, but you go back to a couple of moments in his career, for example, when Celtic played Rangers New Year at Celtic Park. There is a twist and turn and a tremendous pass.
Stay, no offside, that's a great move by Morris. McAvenny with a chance to score.
Appeals for handball against Goff, but still not clear for Rangers. There's Paul McStay. Paul McStay with the open goal. 21 minutes into the second half. The Celtic end goes wild.
Paul McStay was in there, you know, the maestro, he was there. But in the end, I went for John Collins, because I just, you know, that kind of player, a guy that can beat so many players.
Good play by Collins. He's made it. It's a superb finish from John Collins.
His misfortune was to go to Celtic at a time when the club had gone in to a troubled period in its history, on and off the park. Had Collins played with some of the players from the team that I have chosen, then I think the full majesty of his talent would have been seen.
Well, Celtic could really silence this huge crowd here. It's Collins. It's a magnificent goal by John Collins. Collins takes it. He scored! Magnificent free kick from Collins. A magnificent goal from Collins.
But for me, Collins was a terrific Celtic player, gave the club 6 good years, and I don't think anyone could have blamed him when he left to go to France as he did. But Collins was a good Celtic player.
And the fact that, you know, he's doing well in Monaco just shows you what a good player we had. And again, maybe we didn't realise just how good a player we had. But it'd be difficult. It was very close between Collins and McStay. And no disrespect to Paul McStay, but in the end I went for JC because I'm looking for a free holiday in Monaco.
The final midfield position is one which again throws up many names. Among them, that of a player who's considered by many to be one of Celtic's most talented players ever. Undisputed king of the jungle and later the Kop, Kenny.
One of the best players I've ever played with would be Ken Dalglish.
Brogan to Dalglish. To Dean's lovely ball. Back towards Dalglish. A great move and a great goal. A beautiful move and what a goal by Kenny Dalglish.
Probably the most complete footballer that I've come across in my years watching football.
McDonald, Dalglish, this is the chance.
Extremely clever and thoughtful player. You see some of the exceptional goals he scored.
Right to McDonald. Dalglish. It's a great goal. Oh, absolutely superb.
He was such a standout that you just could do nothing but, you know, try and learn and try and look at him. But some of the things he did, you knew you couldn't possibly attempt. That was just Kenny.
Young missing out of that. Glavin. There's Dalglish. Aimed as if he was going to let fly. Dalglish going through again. There's a great chance for Celtic. He's there.
Dalglish is pound for pound, size for size, everything considered the best player Scotland ever produced, the most continental, if you like, the most complete footballer that we've ever produced, and that includes, like, you know, Jim Baxter, Dennis Law, and, you know, people like that. Kenny was the best, I think.
Ball still captain play. The big centre half playing well. Neatly laid off to Dalglish. A great break for Celtic here. 2 against 1. And it's there.
Kenny gave me more pleasure because at that time I was sort of, I mean, I'd grown up a wee bit and I was more into the sort of quality side of football, you know, than just the passion. And Kenny had everything.
But I came in, and because Bobby Murdoch had been having a problem with a shoulder injury, and played the first game. We won 7-0, but I never got on the score sheet. I was playing midfield at the time, and I played about 3 or 4 other games that year. So, as I say, for an 18-year-old to play in the first team, obviously it was a surprise for me, but it was also a great thrill and a great honour.
When he made his Old Firm debut at Ibrox and Celtic were awarded a penalty, this is 1971, he stops on the way to the ball to adjust his laces. Not because the crowd were preying on his mind, simply because that's what had to be done. He was as cool as a cucumber, and he was impervious to all that was going on in the background.
Dalglish against McCoy.
He was always liable to score you a goal out of nothing, and a special goal. But also a great team player. Always put the team first.
Again, you could just about play Kenny anywhere. He started off from what was the old wing half position in those days, now become midfield.
It was so amazing that you could be so excited by somebody getting the ball. Every time he didn't get the ball, I used to feel an urgency that, you know, just keep giving Dalglish the ball.
To Dalglish, and the shot superbly struck. What a brilliant goal by Kenny Dalglish.
The great thing about Kenny was that he was a fantastic playmaker. He could play, if not up front, but slightly behind the front too.
I'd love to have seen him and Betty Holding the same team, because the other guys were in a bit of money and know what was happening. You know, the passes, they were way ahead of a lot of players they actually played with.
And people say, was he right-footed or left-footed? I mean, I still couldn't answer that question yesterday. But he had everything. He had a tremendous attitude. The glee showed in his face, you know, when he scored. It just everything, meant everything to him. He just loved being on that football the field.
And Kenny had these rosy red cheeks, like a sort of fresh-faced young boy.
This could be 3. Dalglish. Yes, there it is.
Honest person. He would never lie to you about football or anything in particular.
It's Dalglish, in fact, and it's a goal!
He was the best, you know, because you looked at European Liverpool, how successful and how dominant they were in Europe. Dalglish was their best player. Everybody spoke of Dalglish, and Celtic were very fortunate to have him. He was a wonderful player for Celtic Football Club.
You know, I remember when Kenny went to Liverpool, and I was really sorry about it and tried to dissuade him from going. But, you know, he always knew exactly what he wanted to do, and nothing would ever persuade him otherwise.
I remember the morning that Kenny signed for Liverpool. I used to give a lad a lift to work in the morning, and he came up to my house about 8 o'clock in the morning and he said to me, "Have you seen this?" And he showed me the back of the daily record. And I said, "You'll need to get the bus to work. I'm going back to my bed." And I went back to my bed.
They might not be too happy to see me leaving, but then that was just a fact of life. But certainly since then, and the games I've gone back in, they've been for a marvellous reception. And as I say, it's nice to see that they appreciate that it was nothing personal against the club when I left. It was only an ambition for myself to see if I was any good to go and play somewhere else. And I always appreciate everything that the Celtic supporters did for me and the encouragement they gave me, and certainly every single one of the members of staff that worked with us whilst I was there.
Kenny just actually get better and better as he got older. Again, because of the fact that he learned a lot of good habits here, looked after himself very well, conducted himself well at all times, and you know, squeezed every last moment out of his career because he loved to play the game.
It was just a pity we couldn't have kept him for the rest of his career. Obviously went to Liverpool and proved it yet again down there as well. Went down and done it, probably the first time, or only time somebody will do it, score over 100 goals down there as well as up here.
The first of our forward positions is claimed by perhaps one of the greatest Celtic players ever. Step forward the unique talent that was renowned throughout the footballing world, Jinky.
For all the footballers I've watched throughout my life, particularly wingers, without trying to sound biased because I'm a Celtic supporter, I would say that Jinky was and is the all-time greatest winger I've ever seen in world football.
I was fortunate enough to be on the ground staff here for a couple of years. We were just coming to the end, and he was only maybe 28, 29 then. But then you could see that he was different from everybody else. He had an ability that was a God-given talent. He was just supremely talented man.
Jimmy Johnson, world class. Get a game in any team. Obviously, a lot of comparisons are made at that time with the George Best and Willie Hendersons and other people who were all great players. But for me, Jimmy Johnson was the greatest ever.
Oh, this is brilliant stuff from Johnston.
At the time, they spoke about George Best and everything like that, and Jim was right up in the same, you know, shoulder to shoulder with these guys. And it just didn't get the same press as about Best got, basically because Best played with Manchester United, which is a sort of British club, so to speak, whereas Celtic was basically a Scottish club. But if the roles were reversed and Jimmy was playing with Manchester United, he would be equally as well known.
He could do things that Jimmy couldn't do, but Jimmy could do things that Best couldn't do. There was a sort of similarity in as much that they could both run it to defenders, take defenders on 1, 2, 3 defenders, no problem whatsoever.
Jimmy was a supreme entertainer. But more than being an entertainer, he was a very key and important partner in a side because he played away and attacked defences. He never let defenders have a minute's rest. He went at them, all sorts of trickery, all sorts of devilment. brave as a lion and a real powerful wee man. You know, people think that he was just a wee fellow with a few tricks. He was an awful lot more than that. He was a wee fellow who worked very hard in his game. As the game used to demand of wingers, he came back and topped round when the other team had the ball, and he was very easy to find for a defender because he knew where he was. He came back and he dropped off, made it difficult for opposing fullbacks to mark him, picked up the ball and immediately went at them, and did that all day long.
Best player I ever played with. I think if you asked any Celtic fans, they would say the same thing, although there was a lot of gifted players there. Great ability, you know, and I played at times right back. It was just simple for me to give him the ball and possibly overlap, but he could sell so many people. Dummies, he scored a few goals too, Jimmy, that was forgotten. But exceptionally brave, because there was plenty trying to kick him out of the game, but he kept coming back for more. But he was the best.
I mean, Jimmy Johnstone aged me so quickly, overlapping with him, just I never seen the ball. I give him the ball and never see it for 5 minutes. I'd be getting back to the right back area. But again, he taught me a great deal about football.
You know, if you're struggling against a packed defence, he was the man that you would give the ball to. And he'd be the guy that would go and open it up. No individual ability, if it was to beat players and cross the ball, or beat them and score a goal, or even he always had a great knack of stealing a goal at a vital time with Jimmy, because he would go where people would least expect him to go.
Gets it across, foot forward to Johnston.
Had his run-ins with Big Jock. I think you find that most geniuses are very temperamental. You know, George Best, Alec Higgins, people like that, very difficult to handle because they are different from other people and other players. So therefore room's got to be made for them, allowances have got to be made. And probably one of the reasons Jimmy sort of finished here, and I think it was about 28, was because he was maybe just didn't fit into the sort of disciplinary code, which is a great shame. But as a footballer, he was wonderful to watch. For a young boy to stand in the terracing with his father and watch this player run up and down the wing and totally destroy defences and create magic and weave around. It was unbelievable. You go back into the playground the next day and try and do it yourself, and you'd end up tripping up and splitting your head wide open in the playground.
When the nice cross, Johnston, beautiful goal, beautiful goal.
Here's Dalglish, has a good ball, and Johnson must go. A great goal by Johnston. Connolly, a good ball to Johnston, and this is when it really happens for Celtic. Johnson going through the middle like that. Kenny Dalglish, Connolly. And it must be the goal. There's the equaliser by Jimmy Johnston.
It's ironic now that if you go anywhere with Jimmy, that he is still the people's hero. I'm amazed that, you know, that since his videos came out and young kids who never seen Jimmy Johnstone have only seen the video, the way they mob him for autographs, and the fans, he'll always be number one of the Celtic fans.
Every side needs to have a goal scorer, and Celtic have had its fair share of prolific ones. Here are just a few of them and some of their goals.
Right, strong and powerful. Lovely flick from all. McBride lines up.
That's Deans. Elliott is out of his goal. Deans has the ball in his foot. Elliott we tackle it. Deans scores.
Into the shot, he gets it, it's a beautiful goal by Craig.
Bonds again. On his left foot this time. That's better from Tommy Bonds. Chances on for McGarvey. Brilliantly struck by Frank McGarvey. Won by McLean.
Woods in goal, and that's a goal. Machiavelli. That's a goal.
I think it was about 1981. I went to see a game up at Christmas time. It was a lousy day, it was frozen. I remember coming home and my dad saying to me, "Oh, why do you bother?" And I says, "Dad, there's a young guy came into the team and I'll tell you, he's worth going to watch at the moment himself." And that was Charlie.
Neatly inside, he wants the return. Here's Jackson Crobban coming up on it. It's a goal by Nicholas. Charlie Nicholas opens a scoring for Celtic.
Charlie, he was a wonderful talent. You know, he came to Celtic, when he came to Celtic, into the Celtic first team at first, I don't think there was anybody could have touched him.
Played really well, scored in his debut, scoring all the time. But Charlie's the type of player at that age he knew he was going to go right to the top.
My first goal against Rangers here, I think it was a tap-in from about 3 or 4 yards to an empty net. But I think if anybody ever sees that, the reaction to me scoring, I think just about sums up exactly how I was feeling that day.
He had the confidence and he had the cheek and he had the ability. Reputations meant nothing to him. In fact, probably the better a player he was playing against, the more determined he was to make sure that guy after the game knew who Charlie Nicholas was.
When we played Ajax here, we drew 2-2, and they had Cruyff, Jesper Olsen, Moby. I mean, tremendous up-and-coming stars. When Baston was on the bench, they had tremendous world stars at that time, and we thought we would get a football lesson, to be honest, and I think the whole of the Scottish media and British media thought that too.
I was quite fortunate to be in Amsterdam, where I think he scored his finest goal for Celtic. We went over there as the underdogs, and I remember Charlie getting the ball probably about 20 yards out and running across, scoring from left and right across the box. He had 3 players round and he looked up and seen the goalkeeper off the line and he chipped the ball over and run it in there.
And that is as good a feeling as I've ever had. I remember going in after the game and Cruyff had been taken off injured, and he called me in to congratulate me on us going through, and he went to give me a top, and I thought it was a magical number 14, and he asked for mine. I gave him a top, and I walked out and I thought, prized possession, and by the time I got to the dressing room it had number 26 on it. So but it was a memory I'll always live with me, that I actually thought I had Cruyff's top, and it wasn't, it was 26.
He had a great ability, right and left foot, you know. He could bring people into the game, great vision, good passer of the ball, and he could score goals. You know, but he had that bit of flair, which you always need in a team, you know. Somebody like that wee cheeky, we used to call him Cheeky Charlie, but he had that, you know, that wee bit, something different. We needed teams to open teams, and he could do that, you know. And as I say, he was a wonderful, wonderful player, especially in the first time he was at Celtic.
Beautiful ball by McStay. Yes, number 29. Into Nicholas around, very intelligently in. Aiming for goal himself this time.
Sad day, the day he played his last game at Ibrox as well. Fantastic talent. Love to have seen Charlie staying at Celtic for a few more years. Probably maybe if you asked him now, you know, that it might have been a better idea, but you know, it's great in hindsight.
I think the worst part was, really for 3 or 4 months there was a build-up where the media were going hell for leather for stories every day. I was going here and there, and at the back of my mind I knew that the offer that Celtic were making me was not really being fair, and even at that stage it wasn't about finance, because the finance were you know, the difference between what I would get in England and Scotland I knew at that stage was crazy anyway. But you know, there becomes a time, I think, where Celtic were in the past, where they say, well, we can get an asset and we can move them on and make some money for ourselves, and I think that's what happened with me. I was part of that bandwagon.
If he'd went to Liverpool, they were probably the next kind of Dalglish, you know, and it was unfortunate he went to Arsenal, who weren't the greatest side in the world. People say it was the wrong choice. I don't necessarily believe it was the wrong choice in that respect. I think it was the wrong team for him, you know, because I think Liverpool were the best football team about, and Charlie, I loved that, you know.
Probably Charlie wouldn't say either. I think he chose the wrong team to go to at the time, Charlie had probably the chance at the time to go to Man U or Liverpool, and I think a more attacking-minded team might have been a better option for him.
When Charlie was here the first time, he was an absolute revolution, as they say. And you know, when they come back, it's the old boxing adage, they never come back.
In 1990, basically, I'd won 2 cups with Aberdeen, and Celtic were out of Europe and struggling. There seemed to be a lot of financial problems also. But I think my head was telling me that the problems were probably going to get worse, and maybe it wouldn't be right to go back. But you can never turn back the chance. You know, I was approached before by Billy McNeill in '88 to come back. We didn't talk finance or anything like that. It just drifted out that I was staying at Arsenal at the time. And then when it cropped up again, I thought, well, I must take it.
Oh, Charlie could have played in any company. He had that special ability, and he could have played in any company, and it would have been interesting to see them.
Bobby Lennox, buzz bomb, because of his obvious natural ability to take off very quickly. Bobby getting up and down the left wing was unbelievable.
Look at this hesitancy. Here's Lennox, almost with a gift. It's a goal by Lennox. Number 2 for Celtic. Lennox the scorer.
One of the finest goal scorers I've ever played with, Bobby Lennox.
Murdoch. And it's a goal! Goal by Lennox.
We played him on that left-hand side, not as a total winger, not as somebody who just went up and down the line, but as someone who was prepared to make runs across the backs of defenders, getting about them and get a fair quantity of goals. And it may at times have looked a little bit lopsided, but it always worked. And it worked because Bobby knew how to play the position. He went back and checked back and helped his fullback. He and Tommy Gemmell had a magnificent relationship.
I knew if I was overlapping or Jim Craig was overlapping on the other side, we knew that Bobby Lennox would be making a late run to that near post and he would just flick it into the net from 2 yards. I don't think Bobby scored a goal from outside the box.
Every 2 chances in a game he's going to stick one in the net, and that's a great ratio for any forward, and he had blinding pace.
Lennox is onside.
Superb athlete, fantastic pace, and caused him so many problems because he would run here, there and everywhere, and he would do the same run in the first 5 minutes, in the last 5 minutes, and people just couldn't cope with his fitness, his pace, and he was also a marvellous finisher.
Bobby actually holds the post-war record for goals for Celtic, almost 250 goals in just under 500 games.
A great goal scorer for Celtic. All based on his pace. He would have scored double the amount of goals that he did get if referees hadn't been deceived by his pace. He was forever being stopped for being offside when in fact he was simply too fast for the rest.
Bobby believed that you hadn't to make 1 or 2 runs in the game, you had to make 102. And if one came off and you scored a goal, then it was worth it all.
Rarely in my experience have I met someone who derived so much enjoyment from playing for Celtic. And of course his career spanned 20 years. He had won so many medals he lost count by the end.
Oh, that's a bad one. Lennox again, facing McAlpine, and it's 2. That comes off Blackley's head, Lennox! What a brilliant goal by Bobby Lennox! And Motherwell causing all sorts of problems for themselves. Knocked home by Bobby Lennox in 39 minutes.
He had a great attitude towards the game, and I think that's why it lasted so long. But even after he stopped playing, I was here as a boy, maybe 23, 24 even, and Bobby was still first at training. It was incredible. He had a credible fitness level, and he was great for even me to show that was the attitude that it was going to take to be a winner at Celtic Football Club.
Gives them a chance to attack Duncan. Here they cross it all into beauty. Bobby Lennox.
And so, here are our final 11.
Whether or not that particular blend would have worked, we'll never know. But you could go on all night talking and discussing the great players that Celtic have had, and really everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and there'll be so many different opinions.
Let's be honest. I mean, every one is, you know, the whole stadium here. We're all failures because we're not actually playing for Celtic. We're all watching them, and we would all really much rather be playing, I'm sure. But I still get really excited about it when it clicks, when it all fits and all works into place, and you know everybody's behind me, crowded behind them, and they're playing well and they're scoring goals. It's absolutely brilliant. There is no better way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. Well, there probably is, but it's pretty good, you know.
I mean, anybody could have played in the first team at that time then. It was just in the aftermath of the Lisbon Lions, obviously. And I mean, the lads there were great players, but they're also great people, and they were very helpful to likes of myself and other younger lads that were there at the time.
That era and the Dalglishes and the Maccaris and the McGrains that came behind us, they proved the point as well because they were successful. Hopefully the present day team will be as successful.
So much money in football today. Football is ruled by money. It's ruled by television, and the demands are for instant success.
I think then there was an innocence about you know, the players are brought in. There was certainly an innocence about the game where players basically set out to make their mark in their football team. And with this club, people would come, the Johnsons, Murders, Chalmers, all Lennox Hughes, all these guys would come and try and make their mark in the club's history, be a player here. The financial side, it was important to them, but no the most important thing, because they all shared in the fruits of the club's victories and things like that. And there was an innocence then where it was all about, this is our team, let's go and make our mark, let's win things, let's win more things, let's make ourselves immortal, which a lot of them did.